Don't believe this, Will. None of it's real.
You saw it. They're lying to all of us.
Politicians, the news, your favorite podcast, you name it, they're all playing the same game.
This is your game, Nicholas, and welcome to it.
They're all using carefully crafted techniques to change the way you think. How else have we gotten so polarized in the past 10 years? It's not like our brain chemistry has changed. Obviously, the way news is told, the way we receive information is the origin of this polarization. And thanks to AI, it's all about to get so much worse.
The kind of video that you might see in a travel video, right? Except it's not real. The video was generated by AI.
I think I'd be lying to you to ease your concerns here. I'm quite nervous about this myself.
I am not Morgan Freeman. What you see is not real. Moving forward, we need to be more vigilant with what we trust from the internet. What is your perception of reality?
So I want to start this off with a story about this person right here, because what happened to her is absolutely wild. It perfectly demonstrates the terrifying reality that we are quickly finding ourselves in. Monica 𝐒𝐮 is a journalist and an author that had her whole world turned around by a doppelganger. Suddenly, she starts getting all sorts of attention online for things that she has no recollection of saying. Messages, tags, videos. People are infuriated with her disgusting views that she doesn't even have. How could this be happening? She does some research and finds out that there is another Monica who is also a journalist, also an author, and even looks somewhat similar to her. But their views are not similar. Other Monica has begun promoting extremely polarizing views about everything from COVID and vaccines to school shootings. 𝐒𝐮 adamantly tries to remove her association with these radical opinions. Every time she's targeted for something other Monica said, she corrects the person and asks that they redirect their hate. But of course, it's futile. Her own work, her own attempt to set the record straight is buried underneath the growing influence of her doppelganger. So instead of fighting a never-ending battle, she takes a step in the opposite direction. She embraces other Monica and dives into what it means to have an online twin. In this rabbit hole, she discovers people completely rejecting reality, the most radical, polarizing content you can imagine. But that's when it all clicks. The disturbing future of information sharing is forming as we speak. The world around us is no longer as black and white as it used to be. Multiple versions of reality are being created by the media to fit the narrative at hand. And with AI generating more and more of the world around us, it will slowly become harder and harder to distinguish the authentic from the artificial. If you don't pay attention to it, if you don't learn how they are manipulating you, you'll fall into their trap and believe only what they want you to. Now, before we can dive deeper into all that, before I can tell you exactly what 𝐒𝐿EN saw, we have to rewind a little bit and talk about how we got here in the first place. Let's take a trip back to before the internet. You got your news pretty much exclusively through television, and it was a somewhat sensible place. Sure, the stories focused on negative subjects, but in the very least, the stories were rooted in truth. Then came the internet, followed by Web 2.0, websites that allowed user-generated content. Suddenly, anyone could post anything. Being a journalist was no longer reserved to a select few. Have an opinion on houseplants? Well, make a website and talk about it. Unfortunately, people began to discover an ugly reality that lies spread 6 times faster than truths on the internet. If you want to make your blog post more successful, all you have to do is lie. And when our new internet journalists were introduced to ad revenue, this slippery slope only got steeper. People began making websites full of completely fabricated stories, all in the hopes that these fake stories would spread faster, giving them more clicks and in turn more money from advertisements. At first, it was just individuals abusing this exploit, but soon traditional media conglomerates made the same realization. They watched traditional TV and print journalism die, and they were left with no option but to face the sea of competition online. So, the race for eyes began. And don't be mistaken, in this race, the goal for these companies is not to provide you with the unbiased truth, it's to make money and influence people. You are the product. Your attention is sold to advertisers and people in power looking to influence the public. The more of your attention they have, the more money they make, the more influence they acquire. And when studies show that polarizing articles perform better than traditional, of course, polarizing articles are written. Now, maybe you're saying in your head, yes, I know all of this. Maybe you're one of those few that have recognized the pattern and avoided its powerful influence. But with the coming advancements in AI, you'll have to be even more cautious than before. Otherwise, you'll find yourself trapped in the mirror world. Let's continue on with that story about Monica Ellen. What exactly did she see when she followed her doppelganger into the mirror world? And why should it concern you? Well, she glimpsed into the future of brainwashing. The strategies being used from this mirror world greatly resemble the terrifying techniques that any media company will be able to implement with the help of AI in the future. Let me explain. Let's take the tragic incident of Sandy Hook, the school shooting that took the lives of 26 people. Now, if you're on the left, you may see this as an obvious reason that we have an issue with gun control and need stricter laws. If you're on the right, you might see this as a reason we need more guns and need people trained with how to use guns so that schools can be defended. This is a healthy argument. Both sides accept reality, but have differing opinions on how to address this reality. Well, in the mirror world, Sandy Hook is nothing but an imaginary story. It's a made-up event by the US government to strip you of your right to bear arms so that you have no defense against a tyrannical government. In the mirror world, COVID is fake and vaccines are bioweapons introduced by the CCP that track you and aid in the effort to turn our country into a high surveillance dystopia. Now, at first, Ellen assumes that the people listening to this, believing this, were all crazy extremists. Always have been, always will be. She believed regular people weren't being persuaded by such radical thought. Well, she was quickly proven wrong. She sees yogis, moms, dietitians, trainers, many of which who are anchored to the left, making the switch. How could this be? Well, it turns out that this wasn't a coincidence. It was a careful plan orchestrated by the directors of the mirror world. Because just fabricating reality, whether using AI or not, does not work on its own. An opportunity is needed to connect with a vulnerable group. The person behind the brainwashing needs to be paying attention to the world and developing an angle of attack. If you can find a way to connect with a group to make them feel heard, it's much easier to convince them of something. Then all you have to do is give them a simple reason to believe. And for better or for worse, seeing is believing. What we see greatly influences whether or not we will fully be convinced of something. There's something about seeing the damning proof with your own two eyes that makes it so much more believable. So let's continue my example. These groups, yogis, moms, trainers, etc., were all a little bit more likely to have some vaccine skepticism. Yogis are all about their natural diets and lifestyles. Stay-at-home moms are always anxious about the food and medicine that their kids consume. When they're suddenly told to take a vaccine without question, it's understandable that they might have a little bit of skepticism. But the country completely rejected this concern. They dismissed it as extremist and dangerous. Now you know what that means? That's an opportunity for brainwashing. Remember, seeing is believing, so what do you think the directors of the mirror world did? They reached out to these groups and acknowledged their feelings. They assured them in their right to be skeptical and gained their trust. Then they gave them visual proof that vaccines are dangerous. Athletes collapsing on fields after receiving the vaccine, apparent whistleblowers coming forward from the medical industry, and tons of other questionable narratives. They provided them with answers that slowly but surely became more and more radical. This is exactly what AI will empower people to do in the future, but much more skillfully. As I said, when these extreme right-wing figures discovered this opportunity to let people feel heard, they abused it. In turn, they saw massive growth of a whole new demographic. Now, they did so by giving people proof that their skepticism was not only justified, but an entire awakening, an escape from the matrix. Now, from here, they fabricate reality. They use fake articles, emails, videos, and logical fallacies to convince you that the people in power have been controlling you this whole time. Now, remember, remember, this is exactly what AI excels at doing, replicating reality. If I want to convince you that the Pope was wearing a cool jacket, well then I can show you photographic proof of that. If I want to show you that China created COVID in a lab in order to harm the West, I can show you photographic proof of that too. I can make anyone say anything, put on someone else's skin, and when this tech gets even better at mimicking reality, these master manipulators will have endless resources to convince you of anything at all. But unfortunately, that's not the manipulation tactic that I'm most worried about.
The thing I'm really worried about is the sort of customized one-on-one persuasion ability of these new models. And that's a new thing that we don't have antibodies for, and I think we'll all be more susceptible to it than we realize.
Did you hear what he said there? Customized persuasion ability, one-on-one. You see, deepfakes, generated images, these have all been covered. We've been warned about them. We will be on the lookout for them. But what we aren't on the lookout for is an AI that understands how to convince you, not how to convince people in general. No, how to convince you. Just take this excerpt from a 2023 study out of Harvard, Artificial Influence and Analysis of AI-Driven Persuasion. AI systems will be more capable of persuading people than dedicated humans. AI systems have the ability to produce many responses and select which response is most persuasive. This is the human equivalent of having a team of speechwriters and choosing whichever speech is best predicted to influence a certain audience. And get this, the study goes on to note that not only will AI be better at persuasion, but it will have limitless social stamina. Some people are hard to talk to and accidentally wear down a person's desire to keep the conversation going. It could be exceptionally good at speaking with antisocial individuals who finally feel like they are being heard, a telltale sign that they are more vulnerable to manipulation. Don't think this is happening? Let me introduce you to 𝐒𝐻𝐽𝐻. Their slogan, "The dawn of AI politics is upon us." 𝐒𝐻𝐽𝐻 is a company that delivers voice interaction with AI that feels like you're talking to an actual person. Their goal is to provide natural flowing conversation to the exact demographic a politician wants to reach. Are your numbers low with Mexicans? Employ 𝐒𝐻𝐽𝐻 to reach out to them. The AI will automatically change its speaking style to one that best matches that demographic. From there, it will listen to the person, pick up on diction, on personality, and alter its responses based on this specific individual. And let me remind you, the AI we see today is the worst version of itself that will ever exist. What happens when AI models specifically built to understand human interaction get trained for several years and improve on their ability to convince humans of anything that they desire? Will you fall into the trap then? Or maybe you already have. Because let's look back at this video. Monica Ellen isn't a real person. I made her up and generated images of a journalist so that my message would be more believable. The paper from Harvard isn't real. I had ChatGPT write me a fake research paper on AI-driven persuasion, and I threw it into a document. 𝐒𝐻𝐽𝐻 isn't a real company. I used Midjourney and ChatGPT to create a website for a company that offers AI-powered voice calls. They're all based on real sources. Rearrange Monica Ellen and you get Naomi Klein, the real journalist associated with the story I told. But that's not the point. The point is that I now have the power to make up any narrative that I'd like and provide you with proof of what I'm saying is valid information. That's incredibly powerful and scary stuff, especially since this is just the beginning. If you didn't fall for it, good on you. But if you did, there's a few things needed to clear your shame. Rules are rules. I will need 1 like. I will need you to subscribe, and I need you to send this to at least 2 people so that they can get tricked too. Thanks for watching.